Anshu, you're recording it then?
It will be recorded to your Zoom cloud.
Perfect. Okay, that's perfect. Yeah. All right. Great. So I would like to request people to mute themselves so we can really hear me talking and I can hear any questions as they're coming in. Today's topic is on tech-savvy parenting. Like I mentioned, this is actually can be a longer series. We decided to do it in 2 parts. Today's talk is going to be focused on more when we are starting out giving technology to our kids. What can we do? So it's around the prevention and setting up, and what can we do in terms of getting them into the right mode with using the media and technology. And the second topic in this series is like, okay, we've all done all of that, and we are kind of seeing some consequences of excessive screen use, and maybe there is some impact of that screen addiction you're noticing with the child. So what can we do if we've gotten into a problem like that? So let me quickly dive into then our topic for today. So our learning objectives today are to learn about what's the appropriate use of technology when it comes to our kids, and also for ourselves. What are our responsibilities as parents to kind of raise our kids in this digital age, and how can we kind of make sure they are safe while using this kind of new way of interacting with the world. So I put this question in the poll, and I think a lot of you did answer it. Again, there is no right answer for this. I get this question asked most of the time: when is the right age for my child to get a smartphone? And what we are learning from just research and from how child's development works, the brain development works, it seems like if we can wait ideally till 8th grade, that's when they're about 13, 12, later part of 12 or 13. That's a better time, because we are also looking at brain development in terms of impulse control, maturity, in terms of like how can they understand what's right and wrong, what can be done to manage things if they do slip. So ideally, it's good to wait until 8th grade, but it could be a family to family decision. It's considered to be an individualized choice. And often, parents feel a little bit torn about this, because like you may feel like, oh, I'm wanting them to have a phone for safety reasons. I want them to be in touch with me. If my nanny is picking up or I'm picking up, I want to know where they are. Like, there's, of course, great reasons for that. But do we really need a smartphone for that, or we need another kind of regular cell phone to, just have that communication and have that like, oh, I can track them, or I can call them if I need to know where they are. So there's something called as Gab phone, which actually doesn't have all the features of the smartphone. So it's better than the flip phone that I do get this question from parents like, but my kid is not going to take a simple Nokia or like a keypad, like regular phone that we used, ages ago. So there is a slightly smarter version of phone called Gab phone, which is pretty cool in terms of receiving text messages, phone calls, and you can take pictures. So there's some, ability that still gives you some of the smart features, but again, yeah, it doesn't give you access to social media platforms and other apps. If you feel like, we really can push this, and we don't really need to have our kids to be contacting us, and we have a good kind of system figured out for pickup, drop off, whatever, and generally it's fine, then ideally it's really good to wait to give them smartphones, because the problem seems to start when you make that first kind of give in, and then if unless and until you set it up, after that you kind of create a device contract and stuff that I'm going to come to. Really, that's your first rate limiting step to get into this world of managing technology with your child. So another way to kind of question yourself is, when is my child really ready for a smartphone? So again, these things can be different for different kids based on their level of maturity, what kind of relationship you have in terms of trust with them. Have they violated trust? And again, my point here is not to like differentiate kids and shame them. Like, different kids are at the different levels of spectrum in terms of their growth and development and their maturity. So based on that, also a parent might feel like, yeah, he's only 10, but, he's very mature. He's shown a lot of responsibility so far with keeping things in place, not losing his things, usually really valuing stuff that's very important. Um, Besides that, what's the temperament of your child? Are they more sensitive kind of kid? They have sensitivity to criticism. Are they impulsive kinds? Again, impulsivity is a known thing for all kids. Every little kid, we know that impulse control develops as our brain develops, and brain keeps developing till age 25. So obviously we can't wait till 25 for us to have that full maturity and impulse control. But within that framework, if we kind of want to check what's my child's temperament to feel like this is the right decision to make, or right decision to give them a smartphone. Kind of also get a sense of what's their ability to pick up on social cues, how well they are, because in person, if they are doing a reasonably good job with picking up social cues from the other person and trying to interact appropriately, virtually there tends to be, of course, like greater misunderstandings and text messages especially, you can read in between the lines and infer different things sometimes. um, there's no element of like, unless you're doing a video call, sometimes we miss that body language and things like that and other social cues. So even just thinking about what my child's ability looks like in terms of social interactions and picking up social cues. In general, are they kind of a rule follower kind of a kid? Like, when I have given them iPad or whatever screen access to watch things before, or TV access, how have they abided by the screen limit time, or what we had agreed upon? And how tech savvy they are. Like, again, this question may not be so relevant with the smart kids we are raising in today's world, because they are born with like, such savvy, attitude towards technology. But even within that, like the thought here is about, you know, if they are particularly more aware and gifted in some ways to tap into certain advantages of technology, and that could do them some good than cause problems, then that could be another factor to consider. So common sense media is a really great resource for actually looking at even what's appropriate for what age group for my child to watch, or when's the right time to, give them technology, and what are some of the challenges one can come across. I love this family media agreement that they have. So when I've made this decision about like, okay, both parents, both husband and wife, both parents or both partners, make a decision about, yes, we think our kid is ready, they're mature, even if they are 12, we feel ready, or sometimes they are 11, we feel ready. But I think it's really good to have this media agreement signed, and really talk about some really important safety features, about whether, what safety looks like in an online platform, in the online world, what I'm going to do when I'm posting something, how I'm going to stay balanced with keeping my other day-to-day activities in place and not get too kind of sucked into this access to this, phone that has like lots of options for me to get entertained by. I'm happy to email you guys the media agreement if you want, but it's really easily available on Common Sense Media. So I emphasize this again is because I kind of like to give the example of when we start driving and we get the license. I mean, of course, we are not signing an agreement, but there are hoops and steps to cross. And then once we get the license, we also have checks in place where, okay, if I speed, I can get a ticket. If I don't follow XYZ rule, I'm going to be getting into trouble. So having, agreements, having kind of discussion about what's coming, what is this, how it's going to be handled, really kind of setting the stage for that really helps to have less problems later. So this is something I really like to remind, and I do this with my daughter a lot of the times, that giving them a smartphone, even though they may say everybody is growing up with that, every friend of mine has a smartphone, why not me? I mean, they can come up with very smart ways to negotiate and convince you. But if you can, remind them this is a privilege and not a right. This is a privilege truly that you are giving them because you understand this is one part of what they might, need to kind of be part of today's world. But you are definitely emphasizing that and reminding yourselves and them that this is a privilege, because often parents kind of forget this, that this is something they have given them by choice as a privilege. It was not like a given, like, oh yeah, just like you get clothes and books to go to school, you get the cell phone for that as well. Knowing that the child knows that you will have access to their passwords. And again, you're setting the stage where you're talking about it very explicitly, saying, it's not that I don't trust you. It's not that I want to breach your privacy. It is really important for me to, make sure when you're starting out, I am, making sure that you are using it the way it is supposed to in terms of it's appropriately used. There's no, because we are, all humans, we can make mistakes. As a child, you're still learning to work through this world. Your impulse control and your brain development is not fully there. As an adult, I also slip. So just so we talk about this, like this is an important platform where our digital footprints can be there forever. So if we post something, it remains. And so I want to be really careful in terms of who you are becoming friends with. If I'm giving you access to an app, what kind of people are you interacting with? So every now and then, if I have access to your password, I can check that. And of course, this may, again, these things work better for preteens and tweens than the teens, right? So if you're setting the stage and if you have a system established, usually we see success with that ongoing. There is also recommendation around, if you are allowing them to give access to social media platforms, you give them one app at a time. I forgot to include that in the slide, but if you're like, okay, they want Instagram, they want Snapchat, they want WhatsApp and other, Facebook, everything. Let me kind of give you one app at a time, see how you're navigating through that. And then, we'll kind of see if you're doing a good job, then I can allow access to the second one. And there is, I have access to my child's phone. So I'm making a kind of an honest confession here. How many times have I checked it? I've logged in maybe once in the last, like, she's 16 now. And so in the last like 4 years or 3 years since she has had the phone and access to social media things. But, it's a deterrent for the child. There is a little bit of that, like, when I'm driving, what if a cop sees me speeding? So I'm always keeping that in the back of mind that there is a possibility that's going to happen. So if I am tempted to post something that may not be super appropriate, in the back of my mind, I know, what if my mom logs in today and sees that I did something that was not appropriate? So even, thinking about it that way, you're trying to, of course, you're not going to say this to the child, but you're basically saying, I'm not going to log in every day to see what you're doing. But I'm going to, feel comfortable if I have access in case I need to make sure you're navigating through this okay. Um, again, you're setting up the stage so you're not getting into daily conflicts, which often as busy parents we forget to do. But I feel like this is so important. If we are already setting up the stage for this, there's really a lot of gains that can happen. Talking about general screen time, what would be negotiable, what is the time that you are comfortable with, talking about how much you're willing to spend on the data plan, or if they are having apps and stuff, like what's the deal with that. Talking about technology free times and zones, and I'll come to that in the next slide, and that you will be monitoring their social media. And sometimes this could be done by becoming their friend, and they have to accept your friend request. And I know kids can, be very creative. They can open different accounts, and sometimes they can fool around parents. But we can come to that in the next few slides. But um, if you are feeling like, no, I don't want to be that person, it could be another trusted adult in your family or in your friend circle that they um, are comfortable with, who are their friends, and they can just give you a little bit of a feedback on how they are navigating to that social media platform. So I hope everybody who's listening doesn't get upset about, like, oh, after all, it comes all on me. When I'm hoping to hear what can my child do. I think as parents, we have the microscope on us all the time. We are the biggest role model for our kids. And what we've learned from, a lot of research, not just in terms of behavioral research and other stuff, but even from technology and how technology has changed our lives, there has been a lot that's come out that, you are the role model. If you do a good job balancing your social media use and engage in other activities that are important, practicing your hobby, reading, spending time with friends and family, if you have a good balance there, your kid's going to watch that, and that's going to be the biggest thing for them to learn from than you telling them 100 times to not be on their device or do this or that. It's really important to have technology-free zones in the house, and this is universally applied. So it's not like, oh, this is applied just to the kids and parents can have all the opposite of that. It's, everybody has to follow these ground rules when we are using, technology and social media. So in bedroom, especially during the time of going to bed, there's no devices going to be there. At dinner table, when we are eating dinner, whether the child is eating dinner alone, which can happen if it's a different timing for every household. If you're having dinner together as a family, everybody puts their devices away. There's a tons of research around mindful eating and how eating during dinner time or watching a show and then eating is really not practicing mindful eating, and how we are not really getting appropriate nutrition and value or appropriate kind of social time with our family by doing that. In the car, like, kids or parents, unless it's like long car rides, you're driving places, it's really important. Like if I'm picking up and dropping you off, and if I am driving, it does not mean you have a freebie, you're sitting in the back and you're going to use your phone. That's my time to talk to you, for us to look around, see what's happening in the outside world, rather than putting our heads into the devices and be completely out of touch. When we have company, when we have, interaction that's involved with others, that's another time we are going to keep away our devices and be fully present for in-person, in real life interaction. And I think the pandemic really taught this beautifully to all the kids and to us, that we all got to a point where we were craving to meet people in person. So that, lesson about in real life interaction is really what as human beings, we thrive on. And that's what we are kind of encouraging through this kind of policy at home. um, Establishing technology-free hours. So certainly giving them a taste of other activities that can also release dopamine and give you that sense of joy and fulfillment. So whether it's a sport or a music or volunteering, helping you with chores, things that can, having that balance that, oh yeah, oh, they have free time, so let's just let them be on the device, is not going to really take you too far. So I'm going to quickly skim over these next few slides. I saw some of the questions in our Google form when people were registering, and I realized there were parents coming from different backgrounds with kids of different age groups. So I wanted to make sure this was addressing kind of broadly in terms, all the ages. So in terms of media use guidelines, American Association of Pediatrics for 0 to 2 years of age says ideally no media use. If you want to really, still keep it in, FaceTime with family or some video interaction sometimes is really what you should try to keep it to. For 2 to 5 years age, again, the emphasis is, again, let's not like go to the electronic babysitter, which is what tends to be such a respite for parents. Like, oh, I want a break, I want to finish this activity, or I want to finish this chore, I want to do this for myself. So you like to find that electronic babysitter for you, and you say, okay, my child is watching this. A lot of parents I see use media as a way to distract their child while eating, so they can really do a good job with feeding them, because you feel like, okay, in the olden days we would dance, we'll sing nursery rhymes, we'll create stories to keep them engaged. But now we have like all these awesome YouTube videos and whatnot that can be so much more engaging. So there tends to be a tendency for a lot of young parents to feel like, oh, that's the time my child can watch a video and I can feed them and be done with my job for that kind of time of the day. But really it's discouraged. Again, you're pairing the conditioning is happening, you're pairing the response of eating can happen only when I watch something. And that's what the association in brain is developing, even for a 2 year or a 4 year old child. And that is not good for them. Because then I have parents coming and saying, but he does not eat if I don't turn on the thing. Now what do I do? So obviously there is a strong association, and there will be tantrums if you stop doing that in the beginning. But it needs to be done. If at some point you should do it if you haven't thought of it, because it is going to be very hard as they get older and more stubborn and more difficult to kind of understand. Watch interactive stuff with them is always good, so you know what they are watching, what how you can kind of use that as a way of connecting with them. For ages 5 to 11, again, these are the foundational years. It used to be until about few years ago, I would say, oh, you have until age 12 for your child to be, you can do your foundation in those years. You have time to instill values and instill kind of rules and stuff. But now it's actually even gone down, like first 10 years, that's it, you got. Like once they get into that tween age, and with the amount of exposure and all the technology and everything they have, they are going to become independent and much more difficult to listen to you. So these are your years when you are setting up some really good foundation to what the screen use could be, what's the right kind of things to watch, how can we use technology for the positive benefits it has, how can we use that for interactive learning. Often screens are used for reward and consequences, from shaping behaviors. Oh, you're not going to do this, I'm going to not give you screen time tonight, or you lose your screen time. I think that's not a good reward or a consequence. So I'm sure you'll be asking a question, but nothing else matters to them. So we don't say absolutely don't do that. If that's the only option, we can use it skillfully, but don't go to that as a way to emphasize, because the theory behind that is that if you are using screen as reward or consequence, you're really instilling the stronger association of how important this is, and you are trying to empower that connection with the screens, which we should not be ideally doing. And then of course, go to the activities that we grew up with, maybe not all the time, but you can do board games, you can do outdoor activities, and be prepared for them to discover for them to discover inappropriate content, and how are you going to handle that. Of course, they are curious at that age, they're going through puberty changes. How can you address some of that before they start to look up on the internet? um, when it comes to teens, it's a whole different ball game. Teens, current digital age teens really use social media as a way to fit in. That's where they are trying to find who they are, how they are in compared to other kids who are on that platform. There's a lot of FOMO, that if they are off the phone and there was a long chat that happened and they lost track of what people were talking about, they feel awful about that. So that's why there's a lot of feel this fear of missing out, and a lot of pull that they feel towards constantly being connected to technology, and not get off their particular app, whether it's Instagram, if they are chatting with somebody on that platform or whatever that is. So I guess I have my intention behind this slide is that we need to also understand how they are growing in a completely different world than you and I did, and bring this into perspective when we are trying to implement, rules around it, and how we are handling problems if they are getting into problems using social media, and how much screen time it ends up being. Of course, teens love to, be on this, and they are hyper connected, but this hyper connection comes with a lot of cost. We are understanding more and more that there's a huge disconnect that kids are having with not having those strong experience of in real life interactions, if they're constantly choosing to even also, like, all their friendships are virtual, all their interactions are virtual, they are not interested in meeting friends in person, then that is a problem, right? And so we are learning more and more that the constant post of somebody looking perfectly, wearing the perfect clothes, being at a perfect vacation venue is so it's not the reality, but that at that age they are not able to understand that. To them it's like, okay, everybody looks so perfect, and why can't I be? And there's a lot of higher incidence of anxiety, depression, that's been happening, low self-esteem issues with this technology use. And certainly it's really important to have those conversations with your teen. Just telling them I don't want you to be on the screens does not really do much. But if you find an opportunity to sit and talk to them, if you're reading an article, share it with them. There's a lot more data coming out, especially within the pandemic, we were forced to be online, and how mental health issues have risen. And part of that is to, blame the technology, because all that we did was looking at others and how others look great and perfect, and I'm not. So there's certainly a lot of advantages, and there's also a lot of perils with when it comes to social media, and that conversation really needs to be there. So when it comes to working with teens and tweens, how do we kind of balance that? So um, again, you are the biggest role model. So if you can model good tech behavior, if you are putting your phone down at the end of the day on your charging station, if you are dropping everything and being with your family when you were probably on your social media platform, if you are keeping it away while you were eating, if you're not doing your work calls while it's family time, there's a lot. Like, again, I know we juggle a lot of balls as parents, working parents, but it is really important to start with yourself. And if you can do it, you have a lot more skin in the game to tell them, if I am able to do it, you can do it, and I'll help you. But if you are modeling something else and you're expecting completely different things from them, it's not going to happen. So if you're giving them social media, like I said earlier, give one app at a time, research privacy settings together, set it up so everybody is comfortable with what that looks like. Um, allow them to be friends with as many people, but no spying. You're not, you're not just, doing this to use this friendship for inappropriate kind of use. Talk about sexting. This is really an important thing for teens. What kind of things need to be remembered when you're posting stuff, um, and how you will handle if they do make a mistake. If there is an inappropriate media use you come across by your child, how are you going to handle it? It's again, you're like setting the stage, you're talking about it, you're openly having a conversation, you're saying, this is what I have been reading, this is what I have understood, this is what we will do, this is how we'll handle it as a family. So, of course, like I talked about, setting rules, who they are interacting with, what can they post, friend them, talk to them about the importance of online versus real life interactions, talk about consequences, what you're going to do in case you find that they made a mistake. So there are a lot of parental controls now that a lot of the prime social media platforms actually have. We, of course, don't take time to sit, but there's a lot of settings now they have included where parents can actually have control in a sense that you will get notifications if they are posting something inappropriate, if you're not constantly on there, or they don't want you to be, you don't want to be their friend, or they don't want to be your friend for some reason. There's family pairing settings. So Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, particularly, I was reading an article really more recently updated these things. So there is ways to kind of definitely monitor that. They also have this option, if you're feeling like, I don't know what my child is going to post, you can open a joint account on Instagram as a parent and child. There are other really very good apps like Bark and Circle Home Plus. These are really ones that I have heard great things about, and are more user friendly. And then, of course, screen time on your iPhone, it can be used, like it can pop up and give you a reminder. Hey, your time is up. Let drop this thing and move to the next thing. Talk about sexting, and again, this is something that happens not too often, but it's really important to talk about it ahead of time and really help the child to really think about what the impact of this could be. You're leaving your digital footprint. People are going to take screenshots, and this is going to stay with you in your record, or people can use this against you. Sexting is a criminal offense. You have to make sure you're protecting your dignity and of others. Think before you act. If there's any inappropriate use, you're certainly going to talk about it rather than just jumping to the consequence. You lose your phone, you lose your access. Always a good idea to give the teen a chance to let them explain what happened, what led to that moment, what did they, what led to what they were thinking, and what they ended up doing. And taking away phone as a consequence, unless it's a super serious incident, for any minor slip ups, we say don't take away the phone. That's their lifeline, almost like that's their way they are thriving in terms of social interaction. So be very mindful about an extreme consequence like that. Make sure you're, you do give the privileges can be limited. You can put apps under control, or you can lose some of the access to something for some time, but no phone and you're grounded. That extreme consequence doesn't really help. You have that relationship where you can keep that connection to really um, negotiate and figure out the solution for the problem. So focus on the lesson instead of the punishment, how we can make this consequence more about what did we learn from this mistake than punishing them and making them feel really bad about it over and again. I'm sure a lot of you know about one of the biggest perils of social media in terms of child's physical and emotional health is that it can impact your sleep. So the blue light that comes out of our smartphones and devices really disrupt the release of this very helpful hormone called melatonin, and thus it ruins our sleep kind of patterns. So in teens, as such, developmentally their sleep wake cycle is shifted. So when you and I may start feeling sleepy around 10, they may not feel that happen till like midnight. So they're naturally, their circadian rhythm is shifted. And if I am on device, till I'm getting into bed, then imagine the impact of the melatonin that's normally released a few hours before our sleep. That's been disrupted, and that can lead to further difficulty in terms of falling asleep and staying asleep. And so disrupted sleep schedules, don't help them. The next day they might be sleeping in the classroom, they are tired and at the same time wired because they saw a lot of stimulating stuff. The excessive release of cortisol and the dopamine really didn't help. So having conversations that are more scientifically worthy or scientifically understood with your child might help them understand why there is a policy of keeping your phone an hour before bedtime. I'm sure you will say they have homework, all these things are actually on the device. And so how do we manage that? Unfortunately, yes, that is a challenge. So if the computer is what they really need for the homework, there are settings to limit the blue light emission from that. There are filters, and the new laptops actually have features to turn it to nighttime mode and whatnot. There's other, if you have older, laptops and things like that, there is apps like Flux is one of them. Like you can install things that can lower the blue light, emission, or blue light that can be minimized through that. But in terms of sleep hygiene and sleep, which is such a big building block of our well-being, what we are understanding is that keeping technology away for at least an hour before, if not two, ideally 2 hours before going to bedtime. And if as a parent I can model that and say okay, at least an hour before bedtime I'm putting my phone away, and I want you to respect that, and all of us try to do that, that can be a way to make this happen successfully. And that's how I have found the balance with my daughter, because the moment I started to do that, I think it made a bigger impact for her to also join in. Often parents feel like, oh, my child spends way too much time on the screen and he's addicted to the screen. There's a lot of concern like that. But when is really a huge concern for us to have? We think like it's excessive. When is it really a problem? Because unfortunately, in this technology world, I mean, now the stuff is all online. There's so everything all online, and we kind of have become a little bit of like slaves when it comes to being dependent on technology for a lot of things. But I wanted to give you a perspective as a parent. You may be thinking, oh, every child is like addicted, and there's a whole different this will be covered in the next lecture or next webinar in this series much more. You will learn more about what is screen addiction, what's the impact, how can we kind of move forward if that's happened. But even from education perspective, just because your child is seems to be on some kind of screen most of the day, all of the day, does not mean that they are addicted to screen or that's causing problems already. The problem really is it's a problem when it's starting to encroach on their day-to-day things in life, the well-being things that seem to be very important. If they are staying up late to be on social media platform or technology and or playing their video games, and if their sleep's being compromised, if they are skipping meals or eating randomly because they have schedules that demand them to stay on the screen, if they are preferring only to socialize virtually and not in person, if they are not going for their physical activity or a sport, if that's starting to impact their schoolwork and learning and they are getting behind with submitting their stuff, if it's so bad that they are staying in their room and not worrying about even personal hygiene, if you're seeing any obvious like mood changes and other like concerning kind of changes that you see that all that matters to them is that they need to be on the screen, then that's a problem. That's definitely when you need to, of course, get more professional help. But in order to not get there, if we kind of can focus on how we can create a family media use plan for our family, how can we agree on certain time limits, and this is work. I mean, I know you might say, oh, this is sounds all good in theory, but it's so difficult to do it practically. It is not that difficult. Of course, it involves you carving out time. It involves you to be kind of checking things and making sure you're staying on top of it. But it's a much more worth it investment of your time and energy, I would say. If you can do it this way, we see a lot of problems can be kind of avoided. Keep talking to them about how face-to-face communication is much more valuable. Let's go there, let's go for outdoor activities, things like that. And obviously give appropriate consequences. So hopefully you will walk away with some tools. Be a good role model yourself is on the top of it, obviously. Talk about technology-free zones and create them. Educate them about importance of privacy and how to be careful on online platforms. Try to be patient with them. They will make mistakes, even though you feel like you trusted them and they did something, but handling it with understanding and empathy, and using the energy to focus on the lesson learned than a consequence is really important. And cyberbullying can be a whole different thing. That's another problem we are seeing, because people think that's a very easy way to just kind of bully others. So that's become a whole new can of worms that we can talk about in a separate kind of as a separate topic. So a lot of my slides come from Child Mind Institute and a couple books that I have read. Those are the resources. Thank you very much. So I'm happy to take any questions. I'm sure you have lots of questions, but I maybe answered a few through the questions that came in when people registered on the Google platform or Google form that we had given during registration. But I'm happy to take any questions. And like I said, the part 2 will be focused on the impact of screen addiction and things like that. That's when other relevant questions that you had put during registration would be answered.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Leena. And thank you, everybody who constantly chatted and used the chat box. We have few questions and comments as well. So there's a question. Is there a law that parents cannot access children's password and accounts for 13 years old and up? Somebody said, my 20-year-old daughter was always comfortable sharing her passwords from the beginning and even now, but my 13-year-old son, but not my 13-year-old son. So they wanted to know if there's any law that prevents parent from looking at the phones.
I'm not familiar with anything as such, and I may be maybe not fully up to date on that. I'm just being honest, but I have not come across anything from my reading or knowledge about that kind of law. I think the most laws still remain around, age 18 and above or whatever. I don't think there is any law like that from my understanding, and I may be wrong. If you find something, I would love to be educated about it.
Thank you, Leena. The next question is, schoolwork is mostly online. How do you monitor the surfing and chatting which goes in parallel?
I know. that's certainly a slippery slope. And so if you are, concerned, particularly concerned that your child might be using other platforms, and it's in fact tempting, I have put myself in my daughter's shoes every time, and I'm like, okay, how many times am I finding myself if I'm doing work and then I'm like, oh, let me quickly read or check this or watch this quick video, when we have access to those tabs and those apps, it's really tempting, and we all slip. So, one thing you could do, if particularly if you're feeling like, I feel like my child spends way too much time on homework and that's compromising their ability to sleep enough and well, you can, and again, as parents, I feel like shy away from executing some of those parenting controls that we can actually have. You can turn off some of those, YouTube or TikTok or whatever few apps you feel like are kind of problem ones that could take your child away and get them like in a different direction. That could be done. And that's one way to manage that. Obviously, it's a fine balance. You need to make it very clear to the child this is not like supposed to be a punishment or punitive but that's why we are trying to do this. It's just to get you a sense of control and impulse control back. Sometimes we just need to reset. I have been reading this really awesome book from one of my Stanford mentors. It's called Dopamine Nation. And she talks about her experience of working with people, not only with substance use type of addictions, but, she talks about how we all are, addicted to something or the other, right? Like, anything we overindulge becomes something that we want to, because it gives that dopamine release, whether it is reading certain kinds of novels or books. For somebody, for some it could be being on this platform or being on video games. We all have our kind of pockets there, and what we need to really do is to reset periodically. So if we are taking away a break from whatever seems so important and so fun to us every now and then, that's a way for our brain to reset. And so that could be a way to help them understand. That's what scientific research that she has been doing has found out, that we all need to have that pleasure pain balance. That's the way she describes it. Like, this gives us too much pleasure. If it's not there, there's too much pain. But how do we kind of bring it to a balance where, so sometimes, cutting off that pleasure thing and then having a little bit of pain helps us reset that balance. Otherwise it's in one direction or the other. And that is something you're trying to do yourself. You can tell, I have told my daughter, like, I deleted the Facebook app from my phone when I was finding myself being on Facebook every now and then. This was many years ago when I was new to it, and there was certainly, I would, at the end of the day, I would like, oh, this is my time to just kind of catch up. And then 2 hours would go by and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm on this damn app still and I haven't got accomplished any kind of notes or work I had needed to do. And so my thing was like, I deleted it, and it was a good deterrent for me. I was able to, I didn't delete my account, but that accessibility and minimizing that accessibility was good enough for me to reset. And then I had much more inertia to log in on desktop and read or see something. So if you feel like, I'm concerned about my child being on it, he's claiming to do homework, but his homework seems to be way too long. That's affecting the sleep and stuff. Use the parenting control and tell them this is just for us to reset. And once you give a little bit break, and if you can demonstrate again when I give you access that you're going to keep a good balance, then I'm going to, release this control.
The next question is, I think anybody in this meeting can also answer that if they know. Does anyone know how to control the free video gaming online with strangers? So, Lena, if you know any security measure for this.
Yeah, that's actually a good one. I'm not very, I'm sure there are, certainly there are some app controls there that could be utilized. most have parental controls is one of the comments from one of the audience. So that I think there should be ways to control that. Yeah. I mean, I would definitely expect Virginie, who's going to be doing the next talk, really address a lot of video game related issues, and hopefully she'd be able to add some more resources to this question.
There's another question: how to teach self-control to kids in terms of TV and media time? I think you
Yeah.
pretty much covered many tips and suggestions about it, but any
Yeah,
final comment?
sure. Yeah, no, I think, it is a tough one, right? If you think about yourself as an adult, you struggle to like, start watching a series and you're like, oh, let me end it at a very crucial kind of point. I want to watch the second one. And that can be even harder for younger kids where impulse control is not being developed because that's how their brain is. But what we are um, learning is also part of the problem we are seeing with the kids in the digital age kids, in terms of also their resilience being not as strong, is also that they are not able to delay gratification. And that's a thing that I think we grew up only in a TV age, and we would wait for that one episode to come once a week and wait eagerly to watch that on that one day of the week. For that hour we would block everything and say, okay, that's my time to watch the next kind of episode. But now there is abundance, there is so much. And if we are giving access to everything that they need, okay, you want this, here it is. And so one thing I remind as parents is that we can really make effort to delay gratification for them. I know, as I've been through this journey myself, being a working parent. I would try to compensate for my lack of time with my child by giving them what they wanted, right? And that's one of the ways we try to overcompensate for things that we feel like, oh, I can't be with her after school. She was with the nanny, and here I come, and now she's asking for this. Let me give her another half hour of screen time. That's what she enjoys. That's what makes her happy. But if we can, really keep even, things in perspective, the candy even, or whatever, if we can teach them to delay gratification, that's one way to improve your impulse control. And it may come with, like, if a younger child may throw a tantrum, you may need to get creative and distract them or use other way to get over that hump. But let's definitely focus on doing that. That definitely helps with impulse control building.
I see Payal raised her hand. Payal, you have a question?
No, actually, I just wanted to comment on the question before the last one. It's really an issue that we also face in Sahas. We've received these questions like how to keep your children safe, in these online gaming platforms, because you don't know if the person who they are interacting with are their age or not. There are so many different terms that are used, cloning and so many others. So there are some tips and tricks that the educators are telling us to use as parents. Definitely talk to your kid that who is he going to play with, and also try to do some tests. Ask the person to like turn their face, because if they are really using AI to appear as a kid, if you ask them to go out of the focus, you'll see that that it is not the true self. And there are so many other small big things that we can adopt and we can inquire before we let our kids do the play with that particular partner. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Paya.
There's another question that is about what is setting boundaries for adult children? What would be considered excessive screen use? For instance, wearing headphones all the time and tuning out others. Can the dining table or other areas be considered a tech-free zone?
Absolutely. So I know there's a few questions in that one question. So absolutely. I mean, I think this is a family to family choice, right? And so I have been that was one thing I have been very strict about. Like, we really drop our phones away from where the dining table, and when we are eating, we are not using technology at all. So yes, and then when we were starting to get into this world of technology, and I did this talk pre-pandemic at Cupertino Middle School. At that time, this was, gosh, like 6 years ago or something. It was a while ago. And we were still having some more like newer understanding about technology and what's the impact of that. And we had some guidelines in terms of like, oh, just like, for 2 to 5 years, no more than 2 hours, 5 to 9 years old, no more than 4 hours. Now, actually, it's shifted because the problem is technology is everywhere. The schools are using and so, like I mentioned in my last kind of slide, that excessive screen use is when it's starting to encroach around your child's day-to-day life. When you are seeing that, they are so much, they are not eating unless they watch their show, they are not sleeping, they are not doing their schoolwork, if those things are starting to get affected, that's when it is really excessive. Not to say when you're noticing it, I'm not trying to say it's not excessive otherwise, but really that is kind of the shift has been more now that's when we start really getting, and of course we want to prevent from that happening. So that's why we create those tech-free zones, right? Yeah.
There's one last question, and then we can have Surina ji
a
ask
hand
the
raised
question.
by one person, Surina. Yeah, is that the same person asking question? Okay.
No,
Yeah.
it's different.
I
Surina,
just have a comment. My daughter, she has a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old, and she has a bag which is plug out. And they, even when I'm visiting, they come and they say, "Nani, give me your phone." And I go, "No, you're not supposed to have the phone." Say, "No, just give it to me." And I said, "Okay." I washed her and she put it in the bag. She said, "You can't have it. This is the plug out time." So
Awesome.
I thought that was a great idea.
No,
Because
it's a great idea. Families have baskets and like they've created, things like that.
Because
where
we are
you just
guilty, like what you said about sleeping. I have that issue myself. I can't sleep properly at night, and I'm a senior. And because, we live alone and all that, and we just are on talking to people or something, because socializing, or doing something on the phone or playing games or whatever. So, but I thought for younger generation, that I thought was a good idea, because it's away from me too then.
Exactly. And even for you, if you can, drop that 2 hours before going to bed, you will see
I got to learn that myself.
Right. You will experiment it. And actually it's
Yeah.
proven over studies. The
Yeah.
melatonin release goes back where it needs to be and it starts to improve.
Right. Can we have the recording of this so I can send it to my daughter?
Sure.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah,
Yeah,
she does
somebody
all that,
mentioned-
but it will reinforce coming from a professional that she's doing the right job.
Yeah,
She's doing the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doreen.
Thank you.
Yeah, somebody mentioned digital fasting, and I think this will be even covered in in more depth next session. So the whole philosophy of how we think about, when we are dieting, there's a whole thing about when we need, in order to bring that pleasure pain balance to reset, we need to do intermittent fasting there too. And there is this concept of internet diet, internet fasting, that's been studied and shown good results with.
Yeah, very true. Is it for the Sahas in charge, whoever is conducting this? Question for her: is it okay if I share this so my daughter can be on?
Yeah, absolutely, Surina ji, anytime.
Bio.
This is a open platform, open forum. It's for the community. So definitely invite her to the next series. It's going to be very interesting next time also.
Okay.
So that
She is in the East Coast, so we'll see what time it is on.
Oh yeah, it will be late.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you, Payal. You guys are doing a great job.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll take the last question, and we can then conclude.
Wrap up. Yeah, I know.
So I think there's one question about avoiding YouTube access to the teen, and I think pretty much you covered with the parental control. But there's
Yeah.
another question: if the teen is already deep into device addiction, like phone and laptop, could we still introduce the family device usage agreement that you shared? If so, how without taking off child's anger or rebel?
Yeah, no. So, I think the family device agreement can be always brought in at any point. It's never too late. Of course, when somebody's into a thick kind of habit where now this has become their new part of life and this is what they think is how they can function. I mean, unfortunately, that's the power of the addiction. And so that is still a moment. Of course, Virginie in the next meeting will give you more tips about how to step it down, how we kind of get them ready. But I think at any point, if there are parents who are listening to us today, if you haven't created an agreement like that, it's never too late. Like, you can sit down as a family, and I always say that it's really best when we all come and say we will all do this, because we all are like guilty, right? We it's such a slippery slope for all of us to realize that, oh yeah, I do this too. So I have found this resource, I've learned about this, and this is what I think we should do as a family. Let's all come together and come up with this agreement, and we can move forward and kind of go step by step with that.
Thank you, Lena. And any final comment, anything that anybody wants to share, please unmute yourself. We are going to conclude the session in a few moments.
I think Sarita ji has.
Hi, yes, hi. Thank you so much. This was a great session. I had one last question, sorry. So how can I implement any rules for a junior high schooler since most of their work is on the laptop?
Yeah, and so I think it is a problem, and that's where I think I was answering the question earlier, that if you feel like that's the platform they have access to other things too. So there is ways like Bark, and there's a couple of the parenting control apps can allow you to shut down access to some platforms and only keep access to what the school loop or whatever their school
Okay.
platform is, and to the. So I mean, that can be done if you're feeling like I've given enough opportunity and chances and this is not changing and I'm very concerned. Otherwise, even having conversations about it, and helping child understand how having enough sleep is good, what's the impact of that, why you're saying this. Because often as parents, we are, of course, we have a lot of roles, responsibilities. We just say, don't do this. And culturally, at least from our culture's perspective, there is a lot of just like, because I said so, you have to do this. But with our kids who are growing up in a much more different world and culture, it's really important to educate them, collaborate, and come up with a solution. I think that shift is very important in the parenting. The moment we treat them as equal, especially for older teens, even for young, I mean, all kids for that matter. But when we say and when we validate and empathize why this is important to you, and say, I get it, this is the time you feel, and this happens to me too. But let's think about, what is this doing? What is this taking away from us? How can we make a change there? That conversation can actually help bring a shift. And I have a junior in high school in my, trust me, I have done this with her. That works.
Okay. Yeah, it seems like they're working all the time, but we don't know what else is going on the side. So
yeah, no, it is concerning. Yeah.
Okay,
Hi, ma'am.
thank you.
This is Kamlesh here. So I have an observation. Like, we recently moved from India, and we see that the school system here is also enforcing a lot of screen time. Unfortunately, most of the time they're on iPad, though they're not digressing from their work, but they're all the time on the screen in the school, as well as their homework at home is as well on the screen. So we are left with no choice, but they're going through this kind of a thing. I'm not sure if this thing has to be brought to the schools, and they may want to revise it for at least for under 8 or until the middle school, so they're not exposed to this much of screen. Is there anything collectively being done on that side?
Yeah, no, it's a great point you're raising, Kamlesh. I think we are not there yet, but I think the more data we are getting about how technology and excessive use can be harmful, we will be moving in that direction. I think the whole digital thing was, brought in more from the perspective of going green and not using more paper. Like there were, we shifted to one thing thinking this is the way to go, and now we are seeing the going to the other end completely is also problematic. So the balance is somewhere in the middle. So hopefully this, as more research data comes out, as we learn more about the problems we are encountering with this approach, we will probably one day have that kind of change happen as well.
Yeah, absolutely. No, they don't even get to write. That's kind of surprising, right? So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think it just flashed for me. I think yes, sometimes we can be the instrument to bring that change, right?
Mhm.
So
Right.
if you feel like, if there's enough, if you, and just even as a single person, of course, as a parent, you have the ability to talk to the school authority or
Yeah.
group of
Yeah.
parents who have similar concern, and talk about it and see if there is a way to have a balance there. Yeah.
Right, absolutely. No, we're planning to talk to the school as well on this, right? Thanks,
Awesome.
thanks for your initiative, and this is very helpful.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. I know we kept people way past than we hoped for. Hopefully, this was a good investment of your time. I will definitely send you the family media agreement and some other links of the resources. We have all your emails, and hopefully we'll also be able to send you the YouTube link on which we can upload this recording from today.
Thank you everyone for joining, and I'll be quickly sharing the flyer here. So we'll be having the second part on April 26th, the same time, 7:30 p.m. And you can scan the QR code here if you have not registered or you want to share the registration link to anyone. So thank you for joining. Register for the next session, and I'm looking forward to learning from Dr. Leena on April 26th, because no matter it's teenager or adults, we all deal with screen addiction, and looking forward to it. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
you.
Thanks. Yeah.